Well, let's get some more analysis on this. And I'm joined now by Bernard Benhamou, who is the Secretary General of the Institute of Digital Sovereignty. Welcome back to France 24. Good to have you with us again. You're also a lecturer on internet governance at Panthéon-Sorbonne University here in Paris. Question one, why this ban on TikTok in Montana?
Some lawmakers in the US want to take a stand against TikTok after the hearing at the Senate, which was a very lively and strongly opposed to TikTok. So in a way, they wanted to be the first to create a momentum against TikTok, which is seen as a threat in terms of security, national security, privacy, and which can be used by Chinese authorities. And the tension between US and China, the tech Cold War, as we call it now, is becoming very present for the lawmakers. Montana was the first, maybe not the last.
You mentioned one of the concerns, namely that TikTok could be harvesting user data, could be spying on users we don't know, but it can also shape public discourse, can't it? How influential is it?
At this moment, they have had the fastest growth of all social networks ever. They gather something like 1.5 billion users. So not only outside China. In China, it's another name. It's Douyin, which is another name. But basically, they have information on the tastes, the political opinions of so many people that what we have been saying for a few months now is that for a Chinese regime, authoritarian Chinese regime, not using those data for propaganda, for political goals, would be in a way a sort of malpractice. They need to use those data, even if they claim they will not, and they have been claiming it, even if they have been surprised by using journalists' information, geolocation of journalists. They've been obliged to admit it publicly, which was a big problem for them. But in a way, having so many thousands of different types of information on each user is indeed a temptation too high to be discarded.
With regards to this ban in Montana, I mean, it's not very easily enforced, is it? It's going to be a nightmare to enforce it.
It will be a nightmare. There will be a lot of litigations. And probably most journalists talking about this say that it will not be implemented anytime soon.
But said January.
Yeah.
Does that sound likely?
I will not bet on it. I will not bet on it. But what I know is that such companies, especially in those times of tension between China and the US, are very, very obsessed by the public image they have. And such actions could modify their image, and especially for investors, not only for users, but for the global economic sector, and they fear that more than the backlash of some users.
If people watching are worried about their data privacy and so on using apps like TikTok, are there any other apps that people perhaps might want to be cautious about using that could result in data falling into the wrong hands, or could result in our narrative, our social discourse being changed?
Let's say that we have been informed in the past by the problems we had globally with the social networks like Facebook, which has been used and abused by some, and Prigozhin, that we talk about a lot lately, have been vocal about saying we have been using that, we will be using it to disrupt the elections in the West. So basically it exists. The problem with China is that their agenda is invisible, it's opaque, and they can use it in many ways to gather data to improve their own technologies, and especially AI, artificial intelligence, which they want to create more AI than the US, and that's a competition they want to win. AI, which is at the G7 agenda today. So basically, there are many different levels of strategic thinking by the Chinese that is different than social networks from the US or other countries. But in a way, the gathering of so many personal information of so many people, in a way, is a problem somewhere, because it creates temptation to abuse those data for political reasons, for economical reasons, for security reasons as well.
Do you think here in France or elsewhere in Europe, people are looking at that ban in Montana? And would you say it's perhaps a question of time before perhaps we see something like that come into force here in France, for example?
In France, there is a commission that I've been honored to have a hearing in the French Senate. The European Commission has been banning for all their civil servants to use TikTok. The same is true for the public civil servants in France. And most European countries are taking such measures. So, in a way, is it possible that the actions by the American lawmakers can convince European lawmakers to do a global ban in Europe? I would say it's very early to say, but in a way, the security reason, the privacy reasons, and obviously the political reasons of the political interference or disruption or misinformation, whatever, is something that is becoming present in all lawmakers' mind, somewhere in their deep thinking.
And just lastly, I mean, in China, they can't really lament the fact that the West is banning their most famous app, because, of course, a lot of the Western apps are not available there either.
Indeed. And I was talking about the fact that the TikTok application is different. It's completely censored. It's completely oriented toward education, not leisure, not movies. No, it's a serious application, if I may say that. And indeed, they do have such a strong, an iron fist on all the tech sectors that recently they've been saying that even AI will have to answer to socialist orientation in terms of politics. So in a way, they are the last who can complain, but they will. Obviously, they will.
Okay, well, thank you very much for taking the time to explain all of that to us. Bernard Benhamou, Secretary General of the Institute of Digital Sovereignty here in France. Thank you very much indeed.